fall down to a place where people dress like bats, clowns, and other interesting things. It sure would be nice if this was a dream. Yet although this place seems crazy, you can't help but believe that this place is real.
Danny groaned as he stood up from the grass he had been laying on a moment ago. Aside from the fact that he was bruised and had no clue to where he was, today was a pretty good day. Sure, he was sucked into some black portal and dropped probably over 500 feet to the ground, but a ghost didn't attack him since then. His day could only get better from here, at least that was what he thought. I really need to work on safe landings, Danny complained. Little did he know trouble was headed his way. As he stretched himself out, a clown was laughing as he ran through the park. His partner in crime was following him as they dashed around some broken trees. I really need to work on safe landings, they heard a boy's voice complain from a little ways out. The Joker smirked, thinking that the boy wonder had just given away his position and became the perfect bait to lure in the bat. He turned from his path as he headed toward where he heard the boy. He reached him but found a boy with black hair and blue eyes walking towards a random direction. Look what I found. It's a little boy all alone in the park. The Joker laughed out with glee. The boy turned around sharply and stared at the two villains. Two clowns? The boy asked, confused. What happened? The Batman asked. The detective turned to the masked crusader. The Joker and Harley Quinn escaped capture and are in the park. We have the park surrounded. Batman disappeared into the park. He heard a boy talking and followed to find a boy with raven black hair and electrified blue eyes. His clothes was scratched from the branches, but other than that he looked fine. The Joker and his partner were staring at him skeptically. The two clowns stared at Danny unbelievingly. So, am I supposed to call you both two clowns, or are both of you going to give me your names? Danny asked. Joker, the male clown replied. Harley Quinn, the female replied. Danny stepped closer to Harley. That is a very pretty name. You deserve someone better, you know, Danny told Harley as he lifted her chin briefly. Then he let it go, dropped to the floor and rolled to his left and stood up to lean against a tree. Meanwhile a pie flew to the right of Harley, which was where he was, and a small bat-shaped piece of metal was in his hand. So, why a bat? He asked. Batman stared at him startled. How did he know he was here, and how did he move so fast? He likes to stop my fun, that's why. Joker laughed. The boy let out a sigh. He stepped forward and settled into a defensive pose. The Joker let out another round of laughter at that. Why is it that I always get the Fruit Loops? He sighed as Joker sprayed him. He stayed absolutely still for a minute until he cracked a laugh, but still managed to throw a perfectly aimed punch at the Joker. This was bad. The kid just got on Joker's list. Batman just knew it. Prologue over.
Laughing gas.
Danny threw a punch at Joker just as the gas sprayed at him took effect. Laughing gas, but Danny tried to push against it and zone into the fight. For some reason a man in a bat costume showed up. Obviously these clowns were his, as the Joker reacted to my question to the bat costumed person. The thing was, Danny wasn't totally sure if he was laughing right now because of the gas or the weird people he met within being 5 minutes there. The little kid defiantly surprised Joker. He looked like an easy target to lure or even stall bat with, but the kid was holding his own, and that was while on laughing gas. The kid only seemed slightly fazed by any of this. Joker managed to avoid another hit that came very close. Joker laughed. This kid could possibly outdo Bat. Joker looked to Harley, whom was just staring slack-jawed. Joker swiftly grabbed Quinn in front of him and backed away. The boy had pulled back his arm as it came close to hitting the female, and he managed a frown between laughs. Danny stared at the Joker. He couldn't believe he would use his own partner. Danny glared at Joker. He wasn't going to stoop down to hitting a girl if he didn't have to. Danny turned to where the Batman was and crossed his arms. Tell me you have the cure to your enemies. Stupid gas. Danny managed between laughs. Batman came over to the kid with uncertainty. It's in my cave, he responded. The boy tried to face palm while laughing. It looked rather silly. Traffic light. Danny really shouldn't be surprised. He even said cave. He dressed like a bat. Plus he himself fought a Fruit Loopy clown. Danny sat on the table, swinging his legs and his weight. Bats fluttered above his head, a butler held out finger sandwiches, and a traffic light was staring at him. He was seriously doubting people's tastes. Many would say that he was one to talk, but he had a solid reason for his costume. It didn't come off. Fried into his body. He learned the hard way that not even cutting him open would detach the costume. Danny let a shiver run through his body as that haunting memory went through his body. Which was rather odd for a laughing teen to do, but then again he had no choice in that laughing matter. Batman came over with a syringe and Danny winced. Even after all he's been through, he still hates needled. Tucker had hospitals, Sam had pink, and he had needles. A light silvery black liquid got pushed into his body. Danny stopped laughing immediately and blinked his eyes slowly. The antidote was way too much. Now his body fought the antidote quickly. The traffic light handed him a glass of water. Danny blinked regularly as eyes refocused and left a dulled sense. Danny slid off the table and landed on his feet. "So, what is your name?" Traffic light asked. Danny smiled. He always loved this game. He didn't get to play it much. "It old Phantasma," Danny answered casually like he replied it all the time. He did it all the time with his sister. So much so that now he could pretend any name was his real name. "Weird name," Traffic light replied. Danny smiled. "My parents were kind of weird. The last name is Italian though. I kind of like my name though, it's very unique," Danny informed the traffic light, smiling as he thought of how Sam would have loved the unique part. Traffic light went to leave and right before he did he stated over his shoulder, "Robin."
Naming names.
Jazz looked around Amity Park once more before heading home for sleep. Tears welled and bags gathered under her eyes. Danny had been gone for 3 weeks. No one knew where he was. Vlad had ghosts looking in the ghost zone. She looked in Amity with Danny's 2 best friends, and her parents asked all of the ghost hunters they knew if they heard of a black-haired and blue-eyed boy being kidnapped by ghosts and if they had any information to call them. There was less ghost attacks, but the Red Huntress seemed to handle them well enough. Jazz walked into the house and went straight to Danny's bedroom. Jazz looked around the room hoping that Danny would just appear out of thin air like this was all a cruel joke. Jazz sat on the bed, but felt herself half sitting on something. Jazz stood up and grabbed what she had sat on. It was a normal journal, except the journal was rather worn and held a large amount of paper. Jazz opened the journal and found a sloppy second grader's handwriting. Naming names: 8-year Adam Spook, James Wraith, Tom Spector, Danny Phantom, Jake Black, Will Shadow. And so it continued. 52 times until it gave the next year. The handwriting eventually got neater and the names more creative. A smile slid on her face as there was no repeats and she remembered the first time they played the naming names game.
Jazz, I'm bored. Danny whined to Jazz. Danny leaned over and poked Jazz in the stomach. "Will you stop calling me Jazz?" "Jasmine is more grown up," argued back. Danny scrunched up his nose in disgust as he stuck out his tongue. "Jazz is prettier and fits you better, plus it's nice and short like me, so we're connected awesomely. Plus who wants to be a grown-up till they never have any fun? I'll never grow up. Instead I'll escape into space and hide from time as an astronaut. I'll hide from time and stay a kid forever," Danny stated proudly. Jazz's cheek turned pink from the compliment as she let out a laugh at Danny's funny comment. "No one can hide from time."
"Okay Danny, we'll play a game. It's called naming names. One day a week we'll make up a name and we will use it at home only. We need to be able to explain why and how we got our name. We need to only reply to this name with each other and make the other believe that that is our name. No repeating names, and no using a family name. Only first names if you get stuck can be repeated." "Okay," Jazz informed her little brother. He nodded his head, got up and paced for a few minutes and then stopped.
"Adam Spook, I come from a family that was Dutch. My first name was the same as my great-grandpa. He fought in some war and came home to find his great love. He became a cop and died of a heart attack at age 80. My mom loved him greatly and named me after him out of respect. Is that enough, Jazz? Danny, Adam asked. He sat back down next to his sister, looking up into her eyes hoping for approval. Jazz smiled brightly before rubbing Danny's hair.
Yes, but the name isn't Jazz, it's Alexandra Stout. I come from a French heritage. My name came from Alexander, the writer of the Three Musketeers, as my parents were big fans and it was that love that brought them together. The Astutes actually own a bookstore called Knowledge with Astute, countered Jazz. Alexandra. Danny stared at her with amazement as if she did the most amazing thing. Jazz, Danny, we're home from the convention and we brought food. Their parents called as they walked into the house. Both children smiled as the game had made them forget about their growling stomachs that begged to be fed more than once today. Jazz, Alexandra glided forward. Come on, Adam, I heard that our food has arrived, she tossed over her shoulder. Danny. Adam stood there for a few seconds until he smiled again and quickly rushed to catch up to his sister and grab her hand. Jazz closed the book and harshly wiped her eyes. Not once had he missed their game and never had he repeated. Jazz walked into her bedroom and went to her bed. She lays onto her bed hugging the book instead of her usual teddy bear. Come back home soon safely, she whispered as she closed her eye to fall, thinking of the name she would have used this week, Katrina Hope. An English name. The meaning behind her name was simple though. Like Hurricane Katrina, her life was a disaster, left in shambles, but she stayed on the roof with hope that her hero would come and rescue her. Silently she wondered if Danny had a name too. So, she fell asleep thinking of all the names Danny could have planned to use and hugging his journal.